Amazing. Well, hello there, Next Gen fam, and welcome to Mentor Moments with Next Gen HQ. We're so excited for you to hear today's topic, so sit back, take out your notebooks, and get ready for what's to come. We are incredibly honored to have Danielle Strachman on with us today to share her entrepreneurial journey, some of the stories that have gotten her to where she is today, and all of those good details. Danielle is co-founder and a general partner at 1517 and has worked with young entrepreneurs for around a decade. So she has got the experience behind her. In 2010, during the founder of the Thiel Fellowship, Danielle joined to lead the design and operations team. So she has been in this world and in this journey of empowering and inspiring young entrepreneurs for quite some time. So please make sure to get in touch with her and watch what's to come. Danielle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here as always.
Danielle has been a long time Next Gen member and part of the family. I think you've been here longer than I have, which is saying something.
Oh, that is saying something. Yeah, we consider Next Gen like a sister organization because I feel like 1517 and Next Gen kind of like grew up at the same time, and we went to the first summit and it was great. And we just have we do a lot of community building with 1517, and we did a lot of community building with the Thiel Fellowship. And so watching an organization that wasn't us being dedicated to earlier stage founders, founders who tended to be in their 20s and 30s and teens, like it was awesome. And yeah, so we have been part of the ride ever since.
And that is where this relationship is going to continue to go. I just made a correct comment that Danielle is never not allowed to be a part of the Next Gen fam. So she'll be around for quite some time.
I'm a lifer. It's sold. Done deal.
Well, we're about to dive in, but of course we need to do a little bit of a Next Gen HQ tradition. You've probably done a couple of these with us before, but to get everyone on the same page, I'm gonna throw some rapid fires out at you.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear your answers.
Okay, cool.
What is one movie that you'd recommend others watch?
I love the movie Almost Famous. I love it, love it, love it. It's a coming of age story, and I've probably seen it somewhere between 5 and 10 times. And what I love about it is that all the characters are developing. It's not just the teenager in the movie. It's like the parents in the movie, the side characters, like everybody is growing and changing. And I love it. I love it so much. It's my favorite movie.
I'm going to have to watch it for sure now.
You will love it. You will be like texting me like, oh my God, why haven't I seen this before? And I'll be like, I know, right?
Okay, I definitely will. What is your spirit animal?
Oh, I have an official one. I have an official, I have an official spirit animal, and it's a snowy owl.
Oh, I love owls.
Yeah, yeah.
What would be your top way that you de-stress after a long day?
I would say it's usually doing some sort of movement activity. I do a lot of yoga, a lot of dance. I started taking up poi actually. So that's like some people recommend it as fire spinning, but I'm not at the fire part yet. So yeah, anything that's in my body, because my day is very much filled in the mind, which is a great place to be. I really enjoyed there. But I really like doing things like going on hikes and just, I don't know, getting in my whole self instead of just this part.
I love that. Amazing. And finally, what's one hobby that you have?
Oh man, I have a bunch of hobbies. The one hobby that I have right now, I can tell you about it in the background. Ta-da, that one. So I have, and this is, I don't know, I'm gonna this might be a little bit of some of that wisdom stuff you guys are looking for, but I've carried around a guitar for about 20 years, and I always felt bad because I took guitar lessons 20 years ago for about a year, and like I could play chords a little bit, but then COVID hit, and I've always thought to myself like, oh, I've always wanted to learn more guitar, and I felt kind of guilty that I've been carrying around a guitar so long, but I don't have 20 years of experience on guitar. But then I thought to myself, well, I could keep being guilty about it for another 20 years, or I could just learn now and start accumulating that expertise over time. So I started taking up guitar at the beginning of COVID, and I take a weekly lesson, sometimes over Zoom, sometimes me and my teacher meet in a park. And it's been really great. And I've learned strumming patterns, and like we're going over some music theory now, and it's been great. So like, yeah, I would encourage everybody to continue to be a lifelong learner, take up new skills. I find it very gratifying to take up new physical skills because it's just great for your body to learn like, oh, look, I can learn a new pattern that I've never learned before.
I love that. everyone go pick up a guitar or whatever you feel most comfortable to do. And then stick around because we're about to dive in for the juicy details, if you will, into diving into your story, Danielle. We're going to kick this off. I really loved when I was doing a little bit of background research on just kind of your journey. It seems like so many of these past years of your professional career have looked like really looking at the education system, finding non-traditional ways of experiencing and learning, and really encouraging others to see all of the options that are in front of them. What was your educational experience like in high school or college, whatever memories kind of popped to the surface? And do you feel that those experiences have really encouraged you to bring this focus of encouraging others to really see what fits for them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I went to sort of just plain old public school growing up. I had some really wonderful teachers and some really wonderful classes, and there's some sort of there's some themes throughout those areas. And so one was that any teacher that I had, and I think we've all had this experience of a teacher who really sees you and knows who you are and feels like they're nurturing who you are instead of you just being a body in a classroom. I think that was always really important. I had teachers who really helped me to stretch the bounds of what I thought was possible in my learning, and especially in my senior year of high school, and again, just public high school in Massachusetts. This one class, it was so interesting. It was a much more dynamic class. It was team taught by a history teacher and an English teacher, and they really allowed us to kind of get really creative. It was just called humanities, like it wasn't a particular topic, but they really allowed us like this wide breadth. I just remember, I will never forget, there's this big table we had, this is before like digital books, and they had all these books on the table. Like, you can pick any book on this table to like be your focus book. It wasn't, well, we're all reading the same thing. And I remember I picked this book on existentialism, which I didn't know what it was. And I was like, oh, this seems kind of interesting and deep and dark and weird. That sounds like for me. And I had never had a class where you could do that before. So they were offering choice in a way that I'd never really seen in the classroom. Or actually, I was musically trained a lot growing up. And I had some great music teachers and some not great music teachers. And what I noticed is the ones who taught with a lot of love and care, I responded to much better than the ones who taught under kind of pressure and stress. And I don't know, I had like grumpy music teachers. And so those people really inspired a lot of the choice that I think about, of that there's just different ways of being educated and learning, and it doesn't have to look one way. So I just got a lot of good examples of good teachers, but it was really a random event that I ended up working with homeschoolers, which really blew the whole top off everything for me. And seeing what they were doing expanded that idea of choice way further than I had thought of on my own.
I love that. It's just, you know, and it always takes that one person. And for me, very much like you, I had one teacher who was really the influence to everything that has followed. And for me, that didn't even look like academia for a while, but she's the reason I'm kind of here doing all of this now. So I love how influential that one relationship can be for your whole entire lifetime.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that. So kind of flash forwarding a little bit to when you transitioned from the Thiel organization, which you worked at for, I'm going to assume, several years.
5 years.
Here we go. Then over to 1517. I'm in my head imagining that you probably faced some challenges and some individuals who really questioned what you were doing and telling you that maybe you weren't making the right decision. So how did you develop that mental fortitude to really keep strong to your vision of what you knew 1517 could be?
It's funny that you say that, because we have like a very kind of bizarre story about that, which is that when we started 1517, well, first we went to our old boss, Peter Thiel, and we wanted to get his blessing to leave the organization and to start 1517, which we kind of view as like a fellowship 2.0 version. It's, you know, instead of working with individuals with a grant, we said we want to work with the person's whole company with an investment. And Peter loved the idea. We were kind of we were a little afraid that he'd be upset that we wanted to leave or something. And instead, I think at that point, it's like we got more support from him than we ever had when we were like, hey, we want to go start our new thing. So that was great. And we knew what we wanted to do from a thesis perspective in terms of working with entrepreneurs who are foregoing the traditional track by not having a college degree. But what was interesting is we went to a conference that helped you brainstorm things, and they would pick sort of 6 projects at this like 70 to 100-person conference, very sort of intimate. And people would sort of workshop your ideas with you. And we got selected as one of the projects that would be hosted for the whole weekend, which was great. And so we kind of had, it was in Guatemala, it was very warm and sunny. So the conference was hosted outside a lot. And so we had this sort of station that me and Mike would sit at, and like a big umbrella and whiteboards and stuff like that. And every time people kept coming to us, we had already decided like 1517 is a venture fund. We have a huge community aspect of what we do. We figured out all these things. And we had, I think we had already started the incorporation process and all this. And people kept coming to our sort of booth and being like, but you're a nonprofit. You should really be a nonprofit. Like, you know, this is a nonprofit bucket helping young people, working with them. And it's sort of the same thing where, and I think this will resonate a lot with next geners, is that it's just hard to find people who are older than you who take what you do seriously. And I think so people heard that, oh, we're working with young people, and automatically they bucket that into, well, that can't possibly be an investable opportunity, so you should really do this as a nonprofit. So it was very funny. We kept having to push against the people at the conference saying, no, like we're already a venture fund, like that's actually off the table on brainstorming, like this is what we're doing. But we kept getting pushback about it, which is really funny. I would love to go to the conference now 5 years later and be like, look what happened. It worked out. Like we knew that this was the path to go. And it's not to say that, you know, we can read the future or anything like that. Like, but we knew that was the direction that was right for us to go. So that was a very interesting experience to have a bunch of very smart, interesting people coming to our booth, constantly being like, you should be a nonprofit, you shouldn't be a venture fund.
And what a way to kind of stick to exactly what you knew needed to happen and what you knew needed to kind of be that story and that adventure of where this was to go.
Yep. Yeah.
Amazing. So I see it kind of from experiences and from, of course, like looking at 1517, I see it being such a successful organization, everything you're doing and how you're really living out your values, which means that you yourself are a shining example of what success can look like for an entrepreneur. But what would you attribute this journey that you're on to? Is there a particular person? Is there a particular experience that stands out?
I think there's sort of almost like mantras that kind of stand out. And one of them that I always think about is that you just have to put one foot in front of the other. I guess maybe it's tied to like one thing we talk about that we look for in founders maybe is, I'm sort of tying something together here, which is that, you know, a lot of us have a big vision for where we're going and what we want to do. But it's often hard for us to understand how to get there. And so someone will have this huge 10-year vision of like, yeah, I'm gonna do this huge thing. And I'm like, cool, what are you doing on Friday? And they have no idea. They're like, I don't know. And so like, and I don't see it as a bad thing. It's just, that's how I can help guide and mentor and say like, okay, well, what do you think you would start doing? Like, so you have to sort of work backwards from your goals. And when you get down to the real nitty gritty, it's the small day-to-day actions that you take of like, hey, I'm going to reach out to this person over email, or I'm going to start drafting that document, or I'm going to write my first Medium post, or, you know, whatever it is. And it's just doing that little thing and building it up over time. And that has been just an adage for me for, gosh, I mean, I started a charter school about 14 years ago. And even with that, it was just one foot in front of the other. We're just going to keep doing things. But I do think it's really important to be tied to something that you believe in, because that belief in something, it pulls you forward into it. Like, oh, I'm doing this. And I told myself when I was 22, I had kind of my early 20s life crisis. I was sort of going down a different career path. And I remember thinking, if I put my feet on the ground in the morning and I don't want to go do what I'm doing, or I just don't feel like pulled to do it, then I'm doing it wrong. Like, and so that has guided me a lot too, of like, I'll know if I'm somehow off path if I put my feet on the ground in the morning. I'm like, I just, you know, I mean, you have your bad days sometimes where you're like, man, I don't feel like doing a thing. And especially given COVID, I think we're all on the like roller coaster. But I think if there's a consistent, like, this is not for me, it's time to start thinking about what is.
So a mixture of taking it day by day, putting one foot in front of the other, and then also just making sure that you're reading yourself and listening to what you know, like is really kind of going on internally.
and I think it's really important that you are tied to something bigger. There's a story that I heard recently. I can't remember which company it was. Gosh, and I'm going to botch the story, but someone was at this big company and they asked the janitor, like, hey, I think it was at NASA. I think they asked, like, what are you doing? Yeah, what are you, like, what are you doing today? And he was like, I'm supporting us getting to space. And it was like, that's awesome. And it's true. Like, and so that janitor has a future and a vision that they're living into. And so I think all, like, the combo of those things is really important.
You were right on the mark. It was NASA. Dylan shared that.
Oh my God, I got that from Dylan. That's amazing. My brain had totally wiped the Dylan part out. I'm like, I know I heard this story somewhere. Someone brilliant told me this. That's hilarious.
Figured it out.
It's so good. It's such a good story. Well, and I'm always telling people, like, mission and values really matter. And it matters that even the people who are at your org who you think are, like, expendable in some way, like, I hate to say that, but, like, people think this way. They'll be like, oh, I can just trade this person out for somebody else. If they're not tied to a mission, and if they are tied to a mission, they're not expendable anymore, because they're in it.
They're in it, and they are part of the core group of people who are going to make that vision come to life.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's super important. I wish there were better ways to measure that. With, like, I was talking with a friend recently of, like, gosh, I think it'd be really cool, like, along with, like, the stock market that you see, to see, like, if every morning there was, like, an employee text that went out and it was just like, hey, 1 to 5, like, how fulfilled do you feel about, like, where we're heading as a company, or what you do for work, or, like, any, like, little surveys like that. And I think it'd be so fascinating to see, like, hey, how does that fluctuating with, like, how well financially or not well the company is doing?
That would be so fascinating. Let me know when you bring that to life, and then we'll employ it at Next Gen.
Well, you know, it's interesting. There's a whole category that I've been learning about. It's called ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance, sort of assessment for companies. And it's an area that I'm new to myself. I know someone who's working in that area, and it's been interesting to learn about.
Well, keep me posted. And on that note, maybe this is even something that ties into our next and final question for you, Danielle.
Sure.
It seems like there's been a lot of lessons sprinkled about, but if you were to leave the next generation of leaders who are watching this with one key hope that you have for them, what would it be?
Oh man, hope. That's a big question. Ooh, that's so good. I'm like, that's such a good question. I want to sit with that for a second. Okay, I think the hope that's coming up for me right now is something about, not, like, I would hope that people are working on something that energizes the world and others and energizes them. I think burnout is really real, and you can be doing something that you really care about that isn't, like, you're not receiving something back from it, and eventually that means you need to start taking care of yourself, and you know, oftentimes step away from that big thing that you're working on, or that you built, or that you built with other people. And so I think it's really important that you have, like, a virtuous sort of cycle with your work and with your purpose and what you're doing, so that it's energizing you as well as you energizing it. So I would hope that everyone is able to find that balance.
What a great way. Everyone, you heard it from Danielle directly. Find the work that energizes other people as well as energizing yourself, and make sure that you're always going through these cycles to check in and be excited about what's to come in your future. Danielle, thank you so very much for taking the time to chat with us today. So appreciate it. If anyone in the community finds this video and wants to reach out and connect with you in some way, or connect with 1517, how should they do that?
Yeah, email is a great way. I'm Danielle at 1517fun.com. People also really enjoy my Twitter feed, because as like positive as I am, I use Twitter as my vent machine. So I vent about all kinds of, like, just funny startup stuff there. So that's also a fun place. And I've met so many wonderful people off Twitter. It's been really fun. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna need to get more on Twitter just so I can find you.
Yeah, I've got a very funny pinned post right now that people are like, is this real? I'm like, yeah, it's real.
I love that. Well, everyone, go send Danielle an email, go find her on Twitter, and we will be seeing you oh so soon for the next Mentor Moments episode.
Yeah, super exciting. Bye. Thanks, everyone.